Hello there, Shortcuts. This is Stephen here. Video 2 for the Shortcuts list, which will go out at 9 p.m. this Wednesday, August 14th at Sydney time. If you would like to be on this list, drop me an email at shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Well, what have we got here? So, list 1 was all soul music. This is kind of cock rock, thrash, reggae, singer-songwriter, pop, jazz. And the final record is the quiz question. If you stay to the end, can you tell me who was nicknamed the American Beatle and what is the name of their classic rhyming album? There you go. I'm going to leave that to percolate, but we will come to that forthwith. All right. I talked about cock rock. I have a record here that I wasn't sure whether I could put it on the list, but I am going to lead off with it because it will, I think, spark an interesting conversation. So I have 2 records by Wasp, including the Japanese first press 12-inch of this. Wasp, Fornicate Like a Beast. Isn't it extraordinary that they even got away with that? Wasp being the kind of metal band from the early 80s, that was going to be their debut single, and Capitol Records balked at putting it out, but certain countries they did, and you can see the backside. B-side being Show No Mercy. This is the original first press in Japan. You can see there it cost 1,400 yen. This, as you might imagine, is very rare indeed. Why would I have that as a lead off? Well, I remember, I was the eldest in my family, but I remember going on a camping trip to Donegal, the northwest of Ireland, and falling in with some older boys and being invited over to their tent where they had some interesting, shall I call it, interesting magazine material. But they also had a boombox, and I remember this song playing and being so incredibly shocked. I couldn't believe my ears. And I do remember one of the older teenage boys asking me to keep my mouth shut because I must have been. And of course, this is one of those songs that prompted Tipper Gore to create the movement to put stickers on explicit language records. And this song, Animal Fornicate Like a Beast by Wasp, was one of what was called the Filthy 15. The 15 songs that went before this committee that were used to get this law into place. And I thought it'd be funny just to let you know or kind of remind you of what was on the Filthy 15. So you had Judas Priest, Eat Me Alive, and there were a few metal bands. There was a Diamond Head song. There was Put Your Love in Me by AC/DC. It was it was a Motley Crue song, which was genuinely abysmally awful. The Filthy 15, though, also included Darling Nikki by Prince, which, yes, had some interesting lyrics, of course, but I think carried it off. It had Sugar Walls by Sheena Easton on it, and it also had, Wasp we mentioned, but it also had this Merciful Fate, I guess the start of kind of death metal, and a song called Strap On Robbie Baby by a band called Vanity that I've literally never heard of. It also had High and Dry by Def Leppard. We're Not Gonna Take It by Twisted Sister. Dee Snider famously went and talked to the committee, but also had Dress You Up by Madonna. So this song, this 12-inch, kind of created, I don't know, is it a movement? I don't know what you call it. There's the lack of Japanese first press. And this was Wasp's second album. So that track was removed from their first album. Again, as I guess, Capitol really balked at it. And this became Wasp's second album, which was also a pretty big hit. Wild Child, Ball Crusher, Widowmaker. Yeah, not exactly subtle. But the Japanese first press of this record has this in it, which I just want to show you. This magazine, there's the insert. But this magazine's actually pretty cool. It has a bunch of photographs from the band at the time. It is in fantastic condition. Look at that. The hair metal, Blackie Lawless being, of course, the lead singer. There's Blackie. So yeah, The Last Command, Japanese first press in utterly perfect condition. And Animal, Fornicate Like a Beast, very rare Japanese 12-inch in completely mint condition. All right, before I go to thrash metal, I'm gonna talk about something very different. How many of you out there remember this band, The Levelers? This is their fourth album. It was called Zeitgeist. These guys were kind of a cultish, really weird kind of following band in the 90s. All of their albums sound the same, by the way. This is the fourth. The first to the fourth are pretty much interchangeable. You get this angsty folk grunge. It's the way to think of the Levelers, but they have this extraordinary live following. In the UK, Levelers tours would sell out like that, and they would be. There was a student cohort that just lapped this band up. And this record's as good as any. If you really like that type of thing, Hope Street, the opening track, was probably one of their biggest hits. And this is a really nice UK first press of The Levelers, Zeitgeist, if you like your angsty folk grunge rock. All right, I've got a couple more. I've got another kind of 12-inch and thrash special. This is the UK first press of Metallica's Kill 'Em All. There's the lyric sheet and the label. It is in fantastic condition. Really, really good. It sounds really good. There's a lot of these records from this period where they really don't sound very good at all, mostly because the records were too long to fit on one disc. But this one works really well. In many cases, arguably, Metallica's certainly in their top 3 albums, I think. And the 12-inch I have is this, which is the really rare US first press of the 12-inch of Whiplash. This has Jump in the Fire, Whiplash, Seek and Destroy, and Phantom Lord on it. Now, I'm just going to check something very, very quickly. I'm going to have to just double check something. Well, maybe. Well, there may be a linkage to the last record, but there you go. The US first press of Whiplash, which of course is the last track on side one of Kill 'Em All. How cool is that? All right. This is a record I've been looking forward to talking about. This is UFO by Jim Sullivan. This is a sealed copy from Vinyl Me Please. And I'm going to put this aside and I'm going to show you my personal copy because this thing is incredible. Most of you will not know who Jim Sullivan was. So there's the sleeve. This is the gatefold. And that's the back. All music and lyrics by Jim Sullivan. And this record was lost to the ages. And then there's the art print that came with it. The tapes were found. And I think it's the owner of Light in the Attic Records tracked down Jim Sullivan's family and asked if he could put this record out. I love the colour of this. Look at that. Light in the Attic Records, Jim Sullivan's UFO. The Vinyl Me Please, of course, being the special edition with the art prints and everything. But it also has this. Now, this is the story of this record. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some teasers. And whoever buys this record can read this story and have their mind blown. So, the teasers. Jim Sullivan recorded this album. And think of the music on this album as almost like an American take on Van Morrison. So, somewhat mystical, acoustic, really melodic, beautiful, warm voice. Setting aside the complete eccentricities of the story, the record itself is awesome. Except he wrote the record and called it UFO and created a number of songs that have this mystical quality. One of them called UFO itself, another called Whistle Stop, and a few others. And before this record could be released, Jim Sullivan was driving across the Midwest. I think he stopped off at a motel or something. And then Jim and his guitar disappeared. Out of nowhere. Just the car was found, but Jim and guitar were gone and were never seen again. And the theories started to spin up as to what had happened to him. And let me just say, the alien abduction story that's explored in this book that comes with the record is amazing. It's amazing. And so this is my copy. I love it. It's a great album. Absolutely superb. What a package. One of the greatest album packages that Vinyl Me Please ever put together. And I've managed to get another copy. Whoever gets this after you've read and played this record, we need to talk. I love it. I've got one other sealed record. I've been doing this thing. Actually, I've got one more Vinyl Me Please, and I'll come back to this one. So this is a band that I enjoy very much. They're Adrian Lenker is the lead singer and songwriter of a band called Big Thief. And Vinyl Me Please have done a series of exclusives of Big Thief records. This is their fourth record. It's called Two Hands. And it's Vinyl Me Please exclusive mud-coloured vinyl limited edition with 750 copies, and this is number 312. This is incredibly melodic folk rock, but with the is folk right? I'm not sure what the right. I'm not sure it is folk. It's melodic songwriting, very personal lyrics written by Adrienne, who's recorded her own solo records since this one, with a tremendous band. And they certainly must record these things to tape, because the sound quality on Big Thief Records is astonishingly good. Every so often there are these squalls of the most incendiary guitar as well. The band are phenomenal. If you've ever seen them live, absolutely superb. If you don't know Big Thief, this is great. Highly recommended from me. And one more actually there's two more singles. I'm just going to talk about this one. You all know how much I love Nancy Sinatra. Well, this is one of my favorite releases from the last few years. This is the double album, Start Walking, 1965 to 1976. Basically, everything that's great about Nancy Sinatra. Everything she did with Lee Hazelwood. So these boots are made for walking, Bang Bang, all the way through the singles that she did into the 70s, which are superb as well. Beautiful quality vinyl. Another Light in the Attic release, similar to the Jim Sullivan. Love it. Great sound quality. The book in here as well is wonderful. Anyway, can't recommend it highly enough. So there's some sealed records. All right, I told you this was a diverse list. Now, I've got another 12-inch for you guys. This is one of my favourite 12 inches of all time, from one of my favourite bands of all time. This is the UK 12-inch of the Stone Roses, One Love. One Love and the B-side, Something's Burning. Which for a long time was the only way that you could get that song on vinyl. Produced and mixed by John Leckie. The cover art by John Squires. This is a superb copy on Silvertone Records. As good as you'll ever see. One of the best bands of the 90s. Every Stone Roses 12-inch is worth owning. Absolutely wonderful. Sounds amazing. Oh, just so good. Stone Roses 12-inch, UK 12-inch that is. Now, this is the UK first press from 1977 of Baldhead Bridge by Culture. Now, Culture were one of the great roots reggae bands from Jamaica. This is on the Laser label. Their first 5 records are kind of holy grails for roots reggae lovers like me. I've been looking for extra Culture copies for a long time, because one of the things that I particularly love about roots reggae is the extraordinary high-pitched harmonies of the singers, and Culture particularly strong at that. The backing band features, as is ubiquitous, Sly and Robbie. It sounds incredible. Baldhead Bridge by Culture. Great roots reggae album. Highly recommended. All right, I've got 4 to go, and they're all completely weird and quirky. Leonard Cohen's New Skin for the Old Ceremony. This is the Japanese first press of what is in most people's top 3 or 4 Leonard Cohen albums. Usually you'll see songs from Leonard Cohen, maybe the debut album, and maybe one of his synth-driven kind of 80s albums. But this, for me, is the peak. And a lot of it's to do with the quality of the songs, including Chelsea Hotel No. 2, which was, I think, the greatest song that I heard him play. I still think the concert I saw of Leonard Cohen in the Sydney Entertainment Centre. About 10 years ago now, it was the best concert I've ever seen. I love this album. Japanese Leonard Cohen. The sealed 3LP recent repress of 1966 to 1970 is notable for a few things. Firstly, it includes the AI-driven hit song, Now and Then, which was surprisingly affecting, but it also added 8 extra tracks from the records in that period to drive out the triple album, included posters and all sorts. This thing weighs a ton. I've had several copies of this now. I've got one as well. It sounds great. Brilliant, brilliant record if you haven't got it. 2 to go, and I'm going to answer the quiz question very soon. I have one left of this series of Japanese box sets featuring classic records, jazz records from the 50s and 60s. This one is the Drum Suite by Art Blakey, which was recorded in 1956 and is a mixture of hard bop, salsa, Latin rhythms. It's an absolute delight. I am loath to open this. I had about 18 of these, and I think this is the last one. So yeah, the Drum Suite, this little box set, a Japanese box set. It's pretty great. All right. Who was known as the American Beatle? It was, of course, Harry Nilsson. And what was the rhyming album? Nilsson's Schmielsen. Awful name. Now, the reason that I flick forward to this is because Jump Into the Fire is on the Whiplash soundtrack. And I'm not sure if it's the same song that's on this, because there's Jump Into the Fire as well by Harry Nilsson. In the first list that I recorded earlier, I mentioned that there was a track by Junior, I can't remember who it was now, that appeared on the soundtrack of Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Of course, this record was in some respects resurrected by Coconut appearing on the soundtrack to the incredible Reservoir Dogs. But the thing is, Coconut's about the 8th best song on this album. I know Mariah Carey's probably not our thing, but Harry Nilsson's version of Without You is incredible. Early in the Morning is this wonderful acoustic kind of warbly Beatlesy cover. Gotta Get Up is a completely rhythmic and driving opening track. The Moonbeam song is one of the most beautiful lullaby kind of if Paul McCartney had written the Moonbeam song, I think it would be regarded as one of the greatest songs ever. Jump Into the Fire is 7 or 8 minutes of the most incredibly hard rocking, groove driven, riffy songs of the 70s. Let the Good Times Roll. Every single song on this album is wonderful. And this pressing was the Record Store Day pressing that went out in 2017 that included the poster that came from the original release and was pressed on this beautiful yellow and white split vinyl. It sounds absolutely superb. Brilliant album, brilliant record. If you knew who the American Beatle was, well done you. Now there's a list. Looking forward to feedback on that one and this earlier soul list. But thank you if you watched this far. I appreciate it. If you're interested in being on the price list, drop me a note at shortcutsrecords@gmail.com. Leave me a comment, subscribe, let me know if you find this interesting or not, and I will send the price list out on Wednesday as always. Thank you so much.